we go.
Whoa.
Welcome everyone. Hello Ned. How are you doing?
I'm good, Marino. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's Friday. That's the best part about it. It's a long weekend, well, for me anyways, but it's a long weekend-ish for most people. Um yeah, we are here. We are here to do some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we could describe that stuff, but maybe we should first introduce ourselves for anybody who's not familiar with one or both of us. I don't know how you stumbled on this stream, but like, we should say hi. So, Marino, who are you? What do you do?
That's a loaded question there, Ned.
Isn't it?
So my name is Marino Wijay. I live up in Canada. I am a husband and a father. Got a little one that runs around and likes to cause chaos in the morning for me. But I am also in the cloud native ecosystem. So I spend a lot of time working on Kubernetes, working on containers, a lot of networking, and I just like to geek out and do stuff. How about you, Ned? Tell us about yourself.
Oh man, yeah, loaded question as well. Where to start? Um, so yeah, I'm Ned Bellavance. I live about an hour north of Philadelphia in the beautiful state of Pennsylvania. I am a husband and a father to three children who all drive me crazy in their own unique and compelling ways. And yeah, I could tell stories for hours on those, but I don't think that's why people are tuning in. In terms of my tech background, I've been working actively in technology since 2002 as a help desk operator is where I got my start. Um, and kind of came up through that side of things, operations, infrastructure, and then made the jump to cloud in like 2014. And for the last 5 years, I've been an independent content creator and technical educator. And I like to cover all kinds of areas. I think most people know me for Terraform, but we're not doing Terraform in this live stream, are we?
We are not. I mean, it. Some people might have questions about it here and there, but this live stream is a little bit different, or maybe it might be similar to some of the other ones we might have done over our careers. But we really wanted to be intentional. We were after something,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of there's a lot of conversations around AI, using languages and developing things, and then even places where we can build some of this stuff too. And we decided, let's come together, let's figure out how we can build something
Mm-hmm.
with some of our existing knowledge. And we kind of hinted at it in some of our posts out there, but I'll let you speak to some of the stuff that we want to get into.
Yeah. So, like you said, I mean, AI is kind of a hot topic at the moment, just a little bit. And neither of us have a big background in programming or AI, but there's certainly an opportunity there, right? I've started using AI pretty extensively in code development for writing infrastructure as code. I know I said I was going to talk about Terraform, but I'm just kind of happens. And even though I've done a bit of Go development pre the release of like Copilot and stuff, it's actually helped me a lot with updating or adding features to Terraform providers because those are all written in Go. So using AI in that context, but another big context that I started using AI in is the world of content creation. And that wasn't to necessarily create content itself. Like I'm not asking it to write me my script for a video or write me a blog post, but it's more the consumption and summarization and like social media posts. So I just recorded this podcast and I really like it. I would love for something like ChatGPT to summarize that podcast for me, to create the YouTube description and the show notes for it, and then also create a few social media posts for me. I'm probably going to tweak them, but like what I was able to do was feed in previous posts and previous podcast descriptions and stuff as sort of additional augmented material, and then have it more closely approximate my tone and voice. And then I still have to do a little bit of tweaking on the back end, but it gets rid of that blank paper problem where you're like, "I don't even know where to start." So I've been leveraging in that way, but the way I haven't been using it is by interacting with it programmatically. Um, I know that ChatGPT has an API that you can talk to instead of going to the website and typing things into the box, and I know the other models do too. So how does that work? That was my central question, and I think you were you on a similar journey in terms of the world of AI?
Yeah, when the Chat GPT craze took over, I think probably late 2022, it was interesting, to be able to chat with something and have it just say, "Hey, like, I think you should think about this. I think this is the answer." It wouldn't say "I think," but it would just provide an answer. And for the most part, you would assume that it was correct, but we all quickly realized that that's not really the case. And, you
No.
know, some of these models really needed to take a moment to become a little bit more enhanced. And I just wanted to drop a hello to some of the folks that are popping into our audience. Hello, Shantanu. Thank you for dialing in from Pune, India. And hello, Roxy. Welcome, welcome to the conversation. I'm wondering if Jason's a little upset that you didn't make it to his stream, but it is what it is. And Akansha, thank you for coming by. Thank you. Now, you mentioned something interesting around wanting to programmatically develop with AI, and I kind of was met with something very similar when I joined the company I work for, Kong. Um, I joined the company, and probably about a couple of weeks later, the CTO pings me and he's like, "Hey, do you like hopping on stage and talking about stuff?" And I'm like,
Hmm.
What are you asking of? Absolutely, I love this kind of stuff." And then he's like, "Hey, all right, we gotta do a keynote, and I'd like you to do a demo on our new AI gateway technology." And I was like, "Okay, this is interesting. I've never really played with it in that sense, beyond just using something like ChatGPT or some of the other engines that are out there." So it took a little bit of research. I mean, I went over to OpenAI's documentation, and I found all of these examples on how to write Python with access to an Open API or Open AI library.
Hmm.
And that was just like mind blowing to me. But the other thing that was also mind blowing to me was that this was already stuff we already knew. Like, I am just pointing to another endpoint, an API that's going to take over and proxy whatever I decide to do. And so it was really interesting to test this out, play around with it, but it just got me more hungrier. It made me
Mhm.
want to dig a little bit deeper, and made me realize, like, there's some value in knowing how to write code a little bit here and there. And by the way, this is not like a Python, stream or anything like that. We'll mess around with it a little bit. But it made me realize, like, okay, if I can build with Python, learn a little bit at the same time, maybe build something agentic, if you want to call it that,
Cool.
we can get somewhere. We can get to a destination.
Yeah. I like that you brought up the agentic thing as much as that word makes me cringe a little bit, and, hello to Wire 241. Thank you for
That
joining
is that
us.
is that is Richard Choi. He's hanging out there in the background and
Oh, alright.
probably wants to learn a little bit about AI too, I think.
Yeah. Um, so I think agentic is a little further down the road for us. I think we have to start with a foundation of some kind, and I wanna set, like, expectations based off of my level of experience with programming and AI, and Marina, you can speak to your level of experience as well. When it comes to programming, I know enough to be dangerous. I've used Python on a couple projects, but I'm by no means anything approaching a Python expert. Definitely on the more like noob side of things. And when we talked about what language to use, I think we agreed on Python because that's a language you have some experience with as well. But there's definitely going to be some fumbling as we start doing more of these live streams and try to do stuff with Python. And I'm going to rely on the audience and you, Marino, a little bit to point out where I'm screwing up and be like, no, this is the actual method you want to use, or this is the syntax that you're looking for. And hopefully Copilot will help me a little bit. Well, what
I
about you?
actually, you know what? I was just gonna say, like, we need to start somewhere, and for me, if we're talking about development, we need to start off with somewhere where we can place all this code. If I was using a Windows machine right now, it would be, Notepad, but we have access to tools like Git and we have access to GitHub. So we can tie that into VS Code and start accessing Copilot pretty easily. And I think a great place to start is by developing a little bit of a plan. We kind of started a little bit of a plan where, we wanted to start off with going through some of the Python basics. And this is not like hey, we're going to teach you Python. We just need to know what's necessary to get us going forward. And from there, we'll just start building. But there was something else that we really wanted to dig into. And it was because you mentioned it. I had no idea that we could even mess around with a playground. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Bedrock?
I assume you're speaking of Bedrock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So last year, I attended one of the AWS summits, the New York summit, and of course, AI was a big topic for them. And I had not really paid much attention to what AWS was doing in the world of AI because, from what I'd heard, they weren't doing much. That was like the general impression I had. And the release of Bedrock and sort of the frou-frou around it made me go to one of the lab sessions and try to tinker with it a little bit. And kind of what they were telling us was, in comparison to just consuming a single model, the nice thing about Bedrock is it gives you a library where you can interface with a bunch of different models. And so you're not limited to just using OpenAI or Anthropic or the multitude of other models that are out there. You can use one, you can use many models. You can run the same query against multiple models, or you can run the query through one model and then feed the answer into another model. Like, there were so many different options that they were describing, but it all uses the same constructs in the same library. So if we're going to like dig into this, Bedrock seems like a really good place to start.
So why Bedrock and why not something like Google's Notebook LM, or I think Azure has something called the Azure Foundry, or I can't remember what it's called, but why Bedrock?
Um, you know what? I think there's two things going on there. One is because I attended the presentation and it like it pinged my interest. And two, I do a ton of stuff on Azure. I'm just like Azure all the time. I got my Microsoft MVP stack back there. I wanted to do something on AWS, an AWS focused project, because I don't work with AWS as much as I used to. And I'd like to kind of dip my toes back into that world. Um, those were my motivations. I don't know if you had a strong opinion on which platform we went with.
I have, if we were just talking about straight up cloud and messing around with infrastructure, my go-to would be Google Cloud, hands down. Right?
Ooh,
It's just
okay.
yeah, quite honestly, it's been the most user-friendly experience for me, like ever. Like I can
Hmm.
hop in there, deploy compute, deploy Kubernetes, and get going really quickly. But having said that, like it's got its own limitations, and there are some considerations around how you use their cloud. And the other thing too is it's not the most widely used cloud. So if you're looking for documentation, you'll find it, but someone or probably 1,000 others have written so many different perspectives on how to do something in AWS.
Hmm.
And and now I've kind of gravitated towards AWS as well because the people that I'm working with right now are heavy AWS users. And it just puts you right into the mix of like IAM and AWS EC2 and Kubernetes and ECS and all these other things and services that you would consume. But it's not about that anymore. Like it's not about infrastructure. We're here to like really take what AWS has provided as a playground and take it to the next level. Take it to the level of let's build something really cool. Like you want to build something that will allow you to develop your show notes, will allow you to develop some of your social media posts, and maybe even take you to an extent of building out a little miniature course for some of the content that you've already built, right?
Hmm.
It'll structure and stitch everything together. And you could probably deploy something like LM Studio to your local system and download a model, but it's not completely stitched. It's not a full-on experience. It's just a real good way to run a local model and play around and experiment. But if you're looking for something that's very stitched together, like AWS has it down. So I think Bedrock is a solid idea. And I think for folks interested, I'm just going to drop a link in the chat
Yeah,
that
go
folks
for
can
it.
take a look at.
While you're doing that, I just want to highlight one of the messages from chat, which is Shantanu said, in their opinion, the recent summarize this email, Gemini in Google Workspaces makes me feel like the movie Idiocracy, where I'm being pushed around to press buttons. Oh man, that is not hit me yet. I don't have Google Workspace, so I don't have that functionality. But I've heard some feedback from people. I think they switched it on for everybody recently, and the feedback has not been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, I was reading something about how they've now even packaged that into their pricing as
Mhm.
well and like increased pricing. So it's like you can't even turn it off or can't unsubscribe from it. So that makes me wonder, like, what's going on with my Gmail? I haven't even had a chance to look. But let me ask you, where do we start? Like, if we're gonna start this next, we're actually gonna probably get into some of the more nitty gritty, hands-on stuff next week in our next stream. But where would we start?
Yeah, I think part of what we should do, and maybe just in this stream, is establish what we're trying to build, and then what point to start with that building process. And I'm not like I don't have to build a very specific thing. I have some ideas in mind, but I'm also open to feedback from the audience, ideas that they might have, and any feedback you have, Marino. Because like I know the thing that I kind of want to build, but maybe not everybody's interested in that. So, like I said, today, like I publish 2 weekly podcasts plus my YouTube channel. Like there's just a lot of content, right? And I'm so focused on creating the content that I'm really terrible at all the other things that you're supposed to do, like create good show notes, do the social media posts, do the promotions, schedule the posts, like I don't know, create all the assets basically that accompany the content. I'm bad at that. And I've tried to pay other people to do it, but that is very expensive. I don't want to say how much, but I was paying someone just to do one podcast for me, one of my weekly podcasts. And it was a significant chunk of money that I was spending every week for them to do it. And they did a great job, but like it wasn't feasible for me to support that. So now I'm doing it again myself. I would love to have something where based on a trigger, like I upload a new video or upload a new podcast, it kicks off a workflow where it goes and creates all of those other assets for me. And then gives me the opportunity to provide feedback on those assets. So it doesn't just like go and do it all for me, but okay, here's the show notes summary. Provide feedback or edit it as you want, and then click a button, and okay, boom, those are now your show notes. So that's like the idealized end goal. But I think a really basic initial goal would just be if I put an MP3 in an S3 bucket, Bedrock picks it up and does like a transcription and then maybe a summarization. Like that's like MVP. I would like something that does that.
So how about this? Why don't we diagram this out a little bit? I've got draw.io ready to go. Let me
Whoa.
share my
Okay.
screen.
All right. Fancy
Yeah,
pants.
I just literally I think sometimes it really helps when you can visualize what we're trying to build, and
Sure.
then like it really will go. So we could start with this. This is your S3 bucket,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
If I can spell. There's probably a diagram for a
Spelling's
bucket too.
overrated.
Yeah. And this is probably not a good idea to do, but no, we're working through this. So we got an S3 bucket, and then let's say that this is going to be Bedrock, and then from there we have we have output, right? And then we'll start.
Jason Torres wants you to know that it is spelled S and then the number 3, in case you were confused about
Oh, thanks, Jason. I appreciate that.
And hello to Sophia. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Jason's probably a little upset that I took his streaming slot right now because I think he normally streams at this time. Um, but hey, you know what? Whoever's the better hype man, that's all it's
Mm.
about. And so this is your MP3. Jason, did I spell that right? Just to be sure. MP3. Sounds good. Okay.
He still loves you. It's going to be okay.
Okay, so we have an approximate idea. So you've got an MP3, hit the S3 bucket, Bedrock picks it up, and now we have output.
Hmm.
Where do we go from there?
Well, I think part of it's the output. What's the output and where does it go? I guess the output is initially it's just two things. It's a transcript and a summary. And we're going to
Okay.
need to provide a prompt for how the transcript is done and a prompt for how the summary should be structured. And this whole interaction needs to happen through, well, we're going to use Python to interact with the Bedrock library. I don't know where this code is running from. So initially we should just run it from, our local workstations, but then maybe eventually it becomes something that runs in Lambda or something else on AWS. Or maybe Bedrock has something built in where you can just have it arbitrarily run a script or something. Again, we have to find out. There's some research that needs to be done.
We definitely do. What's interesting though is, the way AI operates is that we probably won't even be writing a lot of code ourselves. We'll
Mm,
probably write a few functions. And within those functions, because it's going to reference, let's say, an OpenAI client or something similar, Bedrock's client, which we probably need to go and research a little bit more as well, it will figure out the logic for us. So we actually don't have to do much coding, to be honest. We probably need a little bit of a flow of
mm-hmm.
how that looks. Like, for example, Python code starts. The first thing it's going to do is go to that S3 bucket. Is there an MP3 file in there? Yes. Okay, let's take that MP3 file and load it into Bedrock. What do we do with it? Well, we take that MP3 file, break it down into transcript, and that's just another function.
Right.
And then from that transcript, we can actually summarize. So maybe what ends up happening is this arrow should probably go down here. So it looks a little bit like that. I don't know.
Yep. I think that's probably the correct order, what we're looking at here.
Okay.
If anybody's wondering why I'm glancing off to the side, it's because I had to move your screen share over to my bigger screen because I'm old.
Oh, do I need to make it a little bit larger? I can't see
Maybe
it.
you can make it a little larger, but no, I've got a tiny screen for my teleprompter that just doesn't do it justice.
Let's see if I can do this.
Jason asked, will we be discussing Dino since Bedrock? And wow, yabba dabba do indeed.
Did you take your Flintstones vitamins, Jason?
Ooh, don't knock the Flintstone vitamins, man. Those are delicious. I would eat them now, honestly. We had the chewable ones when I was a kid, and they taste like vitamin C, basically, which is just ascorbic acid or whatever. And I love that taste. I would eat all of them. My mom would have to stop me.
Let's add some color to this diagram.
Oh yeah, look at you making it pretty.
I don't know. I will spend hours on end working on a diagram, making it look so gorgeous and beautiful. I have to start with something though. We have a canvas, we start somewhere, and then
Mhm.
a week later you'll look at this and be like, this looks nothing like what we discussed previously.
Oh look, we've got a fellow Canadian in the stream.
Ah,
Sebastian's here, and he seems to think we are great people. Wow, thanks,
I
appreciate
appreciate
that.
that, Sebastian. Thank you.
Suggestion from Igor from S3. We can go to AWS's transcribe service. That's true. They do have a separate transcription service, so we don't have to leverage Bedrock for this transcription. It might be better to transcribe with it might just be called transcribe, sir, and then send that transcription along to Bedrock. So we're stitching things together.
Okay. Okay.
Whoa, whoa,
So,
whoa, whoa. Okay, I got to pause here because Sebastian is throwing some shade on Vizio, and
hey, you got a license for me? Do I need to submit a ticket for a license?
do you need it? Do you need a license? I got a license. It's We're gonna have to go out back, and I can hand it to you on the down low. So much Vizio. I don't know how many network diagrams you built with Vizio, but I'm gonna have to say it was more than zero.
I yeah, I stopped using Vizio probably a decade ago. I had to say it. Like I just couldn't I remember I had to install Vizio for end users a long time ago. And that thing is a beast.
Oh,
Like
it's
it
beast.
came, yeah, it came in its own like I think set of discs or whatever, and
Mm.
that was always a fun time. Uh, Sebastian's like need VP and CISO approval to get this.
Yeah, you totally do. That thing was so expensive. But if you were an MSDN subscriber, you got like a free copy. That was the you weren't supposed to use it for anything production related, but like I think the
So
statute of limitations has run out on that.
so that's actually interesting. I've used MSDN licenses before, and they stopped that now. Don't do they still have MSDN?
um I forget the new program that it's called, but I have a subscription to something that used to be called MSDN. I still have that, and so I get access through my MVP award to um, all kinds of test software. But a lot of it's just available publicly now. There was a time where it was really hard to get copies of certain kinds of software. Um, but now all the software is publicly available, but they give you keys that you're only supposed to use for non-production stuff. Which,
Mm.
since I don't have a real job, Marino, I everything is not production.
that's that's like I that's cheating, man. You can't do this to me. Okay.
Not
All
my
right.
fault. I quit my actual job to just like make stuff for the internet.
Okay, so we'll drop our code into VS Code
Okay.
and then
Look at you. You
write in
you really
Python.
you've kept this going while I'm just rambling on. Okay, so we're gonna use VS Code because that's what I use. And we're gonna write Python code with it. And I think okay, I'm gonna have to look at the documentation. So there's gonna be some research here. I think I'm gonna have to do some research into how you can easily wire together S3, Transcribe, and Bedrock because there might just be pre-built things to wire those together. Transcribe might just have a function built into it that watches an S3 bucket for files. In fact, it probably does.
It
So we
probably does.
don't even have to
Yeah.
write that glue code. It's going to be when it gets to Bedrock, what sucks it into Bedrock, and then creates the prompts and sends it to the models. So that's the part that we're actually going to have to write, I think. And Copilot might help us.
This totally just went multi-cloud all of a sudden. Like we
No,
went
no,
from
no, no, no,
on-prem.
no multi.
We started with on-prem and now we have two different cloud providers here in the mix.
What's the second cloud provider? We only got one.
Well, technically Copilot's running off of Microsoft servers,
I mean,
right?
yes, technically, but it's running in VS Code, so it's
Yeah. Okay. But anyways, so we've got Copilot in the mix there in case we need it. I
fine.
mean, I think we can get by without having to use it extensively because I only have the free version of it. I don't have a
Oh, I have the Pro. Don't worry. So
oh,
we can use my VS Code.
all right. We're almost there. Okay. So I think we have like a bit of a good canvas here. We have
Mhm.
so many different directions we can go in. What I am really interested in is like I want to know what APIs and SDKs I need to use for Python to use Bedrock.
I mean, as far as I can tell, based off of the code examples, it's just like one library.
So let's see. I'm gonna go to
Or are
the
you going to do
AWS Bedrock
some research?
documentation. Yeah, Bedrock
Yeah.
documentation. Let's see. There is an API reference. There is a Bedrock Studio user guide. I'm I'm inclined to just jump right to the API. Ooh, okay. This is going to be cool. All right, let me share this screen.
Okay.
So, y'all can you're welcome to take a screenshot of this, but it might change. But let's go to share this tab instead and take a look at all the SDKs that are available for Bedrock.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got C++, Go, Java, JavaScript for the folks that want to build in JavaScript or TypeScript. There's PHP. But there's ours. There's our Python Bodo 3.
Mm-hmm.
There's Rust. There's a few others. If you're building with iOS as well, there's Swift. So let's click on this AWS SDK for Python. And there's a quick start.
Did you share the link for that?
Actually, let's. I realize that as I'm opening up Windows, it's not sharing the new screen. So we'll start there. Y'all can go hop to that little link there, which takes you to the different SDKs. And then this is where it took me once I hit the quick start button, or sorry, once I hit the SDK for Python. So it's got a bunch of other references here. And like, yeah, you could do the quick start, but like now I just saw this code examples and I just want to like jump right to it because it probably has a lot, like Amazon S3 examples.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay. Hold on. You're not seeing that. Do you see that? You see
I
that
mean, I
little?
can see that. Yeah, S3 examples. I'm seeing it.
So I click the S3 examples, and now we're going to go in. So we're sharing this tab now. And there's a lot of different things we can do. So we can upload files, download files, pre-signed URLs, bucket policies. I don't care about the security stuff right now. Let's see what opening
Security. Who
files.
cares about that, right? We'll staple that on later.
Yeah. So um, this only tells us how to work with the AWS S3 bucket with Python, but it doesn't tell us anything about Bedrock.
I
And
have
we just
I've got some Bedrock stuff. If you want me to share out real quick.
yeah, oh yeah, let's go.
Share screen.
Sorry, we just like went super super deep real quick.
Listen, stuff happens, right? Okay. So, and I'll share this link in case anybody's looking for the reference. So yeah, it does provide like a real quick and dirty way of submitting a request. So this is submit a text prompt to a model and generate a text response using this invoke model operation. So it looks like you have to import Bodo 3. That's the main thing. And then create a Bedrock client. And then you have to decide which model or models you want to use. Now, what's interesting is my understanding of this is you can create a request that's not model specific by using common arguments and then send it to one or more models. You can create a loop to send it to all the different models. This is just doing it to one model. What is it using?
Titan
Titan Text Express. So there's the request, the native request. It's so input text prompt, text generation, and then there's some values here. So we got to understand what these values are. Generate the requests, and then use the invoke model, passing it the request and the model ID. That's right here. To get a response, hopefully you get a response. And then you load that response, which is going to be in JSON. Extract it from the body, and then print the output text. So that seems pretty straightforward. That's invoke model, but it looks like there's a few different functions here. So I think what we have to understand better is what are the different functions available in the library and what makes them different. Why would I use this one, which is invoke model, versus converse? Why is that operation different, and is it better for what we're trying to do?
So my understanding is that one just gives you the response. Like you say, "This is what I want," and it just like spits it out to you. Where the other one is a little bit more conversational, like a chatbot,
Mm,
where you've got like ChatGPT and you can enable things like streaming. Um, so for example, if I was the chat GPT or whatever equivalent, and you asked me a question, I'd respond in the way as if I was talking back to you and telling you, this is what you should think about. Would you like to learn more? Versus here's the answer, which is I
mhm.
think what the difference is between the two.
It looks like, I mean, based off of what it says right here in the documentation, the converse operation lets you do the multiple models,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
but also makes that what you're describing, which is the conversation, simpler to program. So it's both supporting multiple models and making the conversation simpler. And that's we probably want both of those things. So I guess, hey, we're going to use the converse operation. We just figured that out.
Okay. All right. That is a decision point where I think I should probably throw some. Wish there was like a sticky note option here somewhere. Maybe I'll
Okay.
just create a box and call it sticky notes, and then just throw
Yeah,
in
you're
my.
you're not sharing that screen anymore, so I don't see you. Are you updating our little model?
I am.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say sticky notes, and then use converse model. Maybe I should use this box instead. I don't know. There's like so many ways to do this, and I'm willing to bet that someone's already done something similar in AWS. That's fine. Like we're gonna assume that we know nothing, and y'all also are here for the ride, and you want to learn a little bit more too. Because it's always fun to just do right versus depending on what did I do with my text here? Ah, that's what I wanted to do. Okay, so we're gonna use the converse model. Oh, you can keep sharing. We'll.
Otherwise,
There was one thing you wanted to ask. I think it was when you were planning this out. You mentioned like how you consume this in Python, right? So we have an example. Why don't we take that code that you saw there and let's see if we can drop it into like a VS Code text file for now and maybe try to analyze this with maybe Copilot.
sure. Let's see what that looks like. Let me get a fresh instance of VS Code up and running. And we're going to make some assumptions that actually have Python installed, which
So that could take us in a totally different direction, like building a little code spaces environment which already has like the Python dependencies ready to go. One thing that I dealt with a lot when I was messing around with what Kong has called the AI gateway was making sure Python would work on my local system. But you actually have to use a virtual environment if you're
Mhm.
using like an ARM based Mac, which I'm using. Maybe even in other environments you have to do the same, but I haven't recalled ever having to do that on an x86 system.
I mean, you typically use a virtual environment because when you install all the libraries, you want that to sit in the virtual environment, not be installed in your main, unlike your
Exactly.
main
Exactly.
system.
Yeah, no, that's true too. I mean, the last thing I need is dependency nightmare on my local system. Not realizing that I have this like old instance of a library or something. Oh my gosh,
The All right, there we go. You see my VS Code now?
I do.
Okay,
Oh,
excellent.
you love dark mode. This is
I
like ultra dark mode.
I mean, the reason that it's like this is because I need to have um high contrast for Pluralsight courses, and I got so
Mm,
used to that theme that when I set it to any other theme, it feels wrong.
I hear you. I got it.
All right.
Let me copy this link.
All right. Sure, we'll install the Python extension. I'm surprised I'm actually surprised. That means it's been that long since I've used Python. All right, there we go. Now I'm assuming I'd have to create like a requirements, and I'd also need to create a virtual environment to use all of this.
Yes.
Ultra dark mode.
Welcome to the stream, Shivai. Shivai is a cloud native specialist, tends to hop around to various conferences across the globe talking about WASM a lot. I don't know if you dig into
Ooh.
WASM much. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's your
Oh, boy.
WASM buddy.
I'm going to have to ping him.
And if we need a math specialist, we can always tap into Roxy.
Okay.
Teach us a little bit of algebra if we really need it, you know, a little bit of the diagonalization if we need to get to that level of algebra.
Bring up chat. I'm going to ask it to create the requirements.
Oh, look at that. I would never like think to do these kinds of things. I would just be like, hey, can you explain what this little code block is doing? But you can actually get it to develop a requirements file. Oh, look at that.
Okay.
So now your main.py just references this requirements.txt file. How does it do that?
You have to run a Python command for your virtual environment that it will create some stuff. Python command for it's been so long. What's funny is I developed a whole Python tool for Vault. And let's see. There's a library that simplifies converse implementation. Hey, Lino. What's going on, brother? Do you know Lino Marino?
I do not. Nice to meet you, Lino.
Lino is part of the Tech Field Day family.
Oh, okay. That is,
Right.
I love the Tech Field crew. Like, y'all put on a great show. Like those that have never, watched a Tech Field Day or any of the like Cloud Field or Network Field Days, they really talk about the latest and greatest in those respective domains and really get into some of the real world problems that they're getting to. Like, this is when you're past open source and when you actually need a true real world enterprise solution. These are the folks that got it. They have it.
So I think this is a really good example of how Copilot is really, really helpful. So like I've done stuff in Python before, but holy cow, I don't remember any of this crap, right? So I started by just asking it, hey, I copied code for this main.python file over from the example that was on AWS. Can you create the requirements file for me? And it did. Well, it didn't create the file, but it told me what goes in the file. And then I asked it to, what's the command for creating a virtual environment? I forget. Like, I don't remember. I know it's something venv, but the syntax, I don't want to figure it out. So it just told me, here's the syntax for creating a virtual environment. And then you can activate it by running the activate command that gets created inside the scripts subdirectory. And then, hey, since I had you create this requirements thing, you should probably install the requirements. So it did all those things.
That is very, very intuitive. And if you actually like, I see at the bottom corner there the model that you're using, GPT-4o. I'm actually curious, what are the other you have access to Claude You have access to O1?
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting. That is interesting.
Yeah.
I actually am curious. So does this, when you use these models in Copilot, does it count against some sort of credit system, or like is there a limited number of queries that you can use?
Error occurred when calling. You don't have access to the model with a specified model ID. Okay, I'm probably gonna have to do some more digging. Sorry. To actually wire this into AWS, I'm probably gonna have to do some more digging on how that happens because I this is definitely not a code. This is not a complete bit of code. There's some more here for me to get it connected. Um,
Yeah, you might need to pass in like an API key of sorts, which we probably have to hide. I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah, I think it would run otherwise, but it's just a matter of okay, I need to get this to use my AWS credentials, which means I probably need like either AWS credentials or I'm probably going to need to generate a key from Bedrock. I bet Bedrock has like a key you have to generate and then put in a I don't know environment variable or something to get this
yep,
to work.
yep.
But to your question around the GitHub Copilot, I don't really know how much it costs or the pricing model because I get it free through the Microsoft MVP program. So I'm not trying to make this sound like a commercial for becoming a Microsoft MVP, but like that is one of the great benefits if you get accepted into the program is you get all this stuff to play around with. Um and it's just part of being an MVP. So while we're looking at this, let me just do a quick check and see Bedrock,
Yeah.
AWS.
So I dropped a link in the chat that we can use. That takes us right to how we can provision an API key for Bedrock.
Okay. I assume I have to do that from the console. I can't actually click on your link. Oh,
Yeah,
hey,
it's really
thank you. Thank you. Paul says for Copilot, you pay by the seat. That sounds right.
yeah.
Um, but I don't think there's any sort of like credit system where you can only ask so many chat.
Mm,
I think it's just you pay for a seat for like Copilot Pro or whatever, and you get it. There's also a free tier now that's
mhm.
available to anyone. Um, it's limited in the number of requests or queries you can send per month, but from what I understand, it's generous enough if you're just working on a project by yourself.
So
Can
I
you Slack me that link because I can't
so
really click on what's in the comments.
yeah, so there's a private chat if you click in our
Oh,
stream window, and I've actually dropped a link there for you.
look at you, so fancy.
I just remembered, like, I was even trying to click on the link you shared earlier. I'm like, this is a little hard. So what I ended up doing was I actually went to my YouTube stream and I saw the actual link there and I copied it.
Okay, if we're using Bodo 3, you have set up authentication. Okay, using the IAM because okay. Just reading through real quick. Word. What's interesting because I do already have my AWS CLI configured. But
And it does say,
I'm not sure which account I'm using.
okay.
I have a few of them. I'm not sure which one I'm using my like primary account. I don't think it matters that if anybody sees my user ID. I don't know if that account is enabled for AWS Bedrock, which might be why we got that message back that it couldn't run because I just haven't
Mhm.
enabled Bedrock for my account. Um, I'm looking at that now. Providers, model catalog. We were trying to use Titan.
Yeah, the text Titan, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it anyone Express?
Yeah, it was Express.
Okay.
Okay.
Is available to request. Request model access. Enable specific model. I should be sharing this. I don't know why I'm not sharing this. Hold on. How do I stop sharing? Currently sharing. Then. Okay. So I'm in Bedrock now, and I went into the model access portion.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's a lot of models. And you have to you can enable all of them. I did this on a separate account, and you're going to get like a ridiculous number of emails. So I'm just going to pick the Titan text ones. And next, submit. This may cost me money. We'll find out.
Sophie is right. Like when you work with AWS, you can get yourself into situations. I remember last year, for some reason I turned on Cloud WAN and I didn't realize what I turned on in Cloud WAN, but there were no endpoints connected to it. So I was like, you know, okay, I think I should be fine. I think it's just an object that exists until I got like a $4,000 bill, and I'm like, how do I deal with this? So, you know,
Whoops.
when you make that mistake the first time around and you call up AWS and say, "Hey, I need you to forgive me for making such a mistake," they will make you right. They will make it whole for you. I mean, obviously, if it's like a ridiculous amount, like somewhere near the hundreds of thousands, that might be a different situation. But what I've been noticing lately is an increase of that across different cloud providers. Like I was reading, I think it was a tweet just like a couple of days ago or even yesterday where someone had a ridiculous bill for GCP and they had thought that they'd made modifications so that it, wasn't charging them, but it didn't. They were left with a bill and now GCP sent them to collections. And I was like, wow, that's like intense for a small amount. Anyways, we have so much to cover across these next few streams, but we are almost out of time.
We
So
are. Wow, that went by quickly. We got right down. I honestly I didn't think we were going to open up a code editor, and what we ended up in VS Code trying to write Python. So who knows where we're going to go next time. I'll do a little homework before we
well,
try to
and
do this.
that's why I love these streams because we plan like something so high level. We have no actual granularity as to what we plan on actually doing, and it just happens. Like we just start doing things. And next week when we get into it, we'll probably spend more time on the Python side and probably defining a few things, structuring how we'd want to make make this work with Bedrock. I've also got to do a little bit of research too, but I think I'll show up with some of that research as well, so folks can follow along if they want. But for folks watching in, right, like this is going to go on for several weeks. We're going to try and cover a variety of different areas. I know we jumped around a little bit, but I think we needed to get going. Like you all needed to
Yeah.
see a diagram of what we were trying to do, and then you also needed to see a visual and see some of this in action. Next week will be a little bit more definitive and
Hmm,
structured, I'd say. I don't know.
we'll see.
Maybe we'll see. Yeah.
I think next week what I'd like to do is we talked about taking the transcript and feeding that into the models and asking for a summarization. If by the end of next week's stream we have successfully done that in Python, I will be a happy boy.
Then we're done our streams. Is that what it is?
That's it. Well, we've succeeded for.
Yeah. Okay. I am game. I am totally game. I'm off
No, I
next
think
Friday too.
that's just
So
like what I would like to get accomplished next time. And because we have this larger plan to stitch all these things together, but I think like that core part of just working with the Python library and getting it to respond to a prompt and feed it information, that's like step one for me. And then we can start like figuring out how to automate it and bolt in other things.
I know we're almost at the end. We're at the end. I'm sorry, Sophia. Like I wish we can go on for hours and hours. Shivai has a question. Can you share what is M.A.I.N? That's
It's so
actually
stupid.
it's actually not. It's amazing. Like I when I was looking at our document when we were planning this out, I was like, we need a title. And I'm like, I'm asking Ned, what should we call this? And he's like, that's the title, live stream on Maine. And then he points out that Maine stands for Marino, AI, and Ned.
Yep.
That's what it is. And I was like, why didn't I think of that? Anyways, y'all, thank you for coming by. I hope you have
Yeah.
an excellent Friday and weekend.
Yeah. And we'll be back next week with more Python, Bodo, and some kind of AI thing. Thanks for joining the main. We'll call it the
Thanks
main.
for joining Livestream on Maine. Cheers,
Yeah.
everyone. See ya.
Bye, everyone.